during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. This webinar is also being recorded, and the recording, presentation slides, and all links mentioned will be emailed to all registrants tomorrow. And finally, we've had unprecedented interest in today's topic, so there may be some overflow viewers joining us live on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can type your questions directly into the YouTube chat, and we'll do our best to include those in the Q&A as well. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Rich Fiesta, the Executive Director of the Alliance for Retired Americans. Over to you, Rich.
Thank you, Maureen, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome. My name is Rich Fiesta, and I'm the Alliance for Retired Americans Executive Director. The Alliance is a grassroots advocacy organization founded 25 years ago by the AFL-CIO Executive Council. We have 4.41 million members across the country and chapters in nearly every state. Our members are workers who were retired union members, community activists, and leaders, all united by the belief that every American deserves a secure and healthy retirement. Today, a secure retirement is becoming harder and harder to obtain. And the proliferation of new, more sophisticated scams powered by artificial intelligence and distributed through social networks is making it even harder for that secure retirement. That's why we're proud today to be kicking off our Alliance Stop the Scam campaign today. Throughout this year, we will reach out to older Americans to educate them about new twists on the scams that sadly we're all too familiar with. We're going to hold town halls and press conferences and virtual and in-person meetings to raise awareness about this growing threat. So today is just the beginning. I hope you leave today's webinar a little more savvy and better equipped to protect yourself and your loved ones online. And I hope you'll be ready to join us at the Alliance for Retired Americans as we demand that policymakers from Capitol Hill to state capitals around the country take action to rein in AI and hold scammers and the platforms that host and enable these scams accountable for their actions. Now, before I introduce our speakers, we'd like to take a quick poll, and it'll be on the screen. Have you or anyone you know ever lost money to a scam? Please click the answer to the poll, yes or no, and we will tally and give the results at the end of today's webinar. So now I'd like to introduce our expert presenters. First is Marissa Whitehouse, who's serving as our consultant on this program for the Alliance. She's leading our national effort to protect older Americans from social media and AI-enabled scams. Marissa brings a deep and long experience in aging and healthy aging issues, including federal leadership as the program director for the Senior Medicare Patrol at the Department of Health and Human Services. It's a national initiative to prevent, and detect, and report healthcare fraud in Medicare using Medicare volunteers from around the country. And we're proud and glad that Marissa has joined our team on today's program and throughout the year. Marissa is joined today by Yosef Getachew. Yosef is a senior policy counsel at Reset Tech. Reset Tech is working to combat digital threats to the security, safety, and fundamental rights around the world. His work is focused on the United States, and he is working to shape policies and regulations to safeguard digital rights and mitigate platform business practices that cause public harm. Prior to joining Reset, Yosef was the Media and Democracy Program Director for Common Cause, a well-known national advocacy group. So now I'm going to give the program over to them, and take it away, Marissa.
Thank you so much, Rich. And thank you also to Yosef, my co-presenter for today. I know we're both so glad to be here with all of you. Before we talk about scams involving AI and social media, it's important that we start with the basics for all of you. We'll talk about first, what is AI, or artificial intelligence? In plain language, AI is computer technology designed to imitate human communication and behavior, but it isn't human. It doesn't have judgment, it doesn't have emotions, and it doesn't have values. Instead, AI learns by being fed huge amounts of information, like real voices, photos, social media posts, emails, and then it looks for patterns and uses those patterns to generate something new, like a message, a photo, a video, or even a voice that can sound very, very real. Here is an example for all of you. If you gave AI thousands of messages from Alliance staff and members across the country, it could learn how we talk about things like Medicare, like Social Security, like our current issues, and then it could generate fake messages that sound like they came from real people who are actually involved in this work. That is exactly how scammers are using AI at this point. They use real human content to create convincing fake messages, voices, and videos, and it is getting harder and harder to tell what is real and what is not, as you'll see a little bit later in the presentation. That's why understanding AI is so important. Not to be afraid of it, but to understand it and to continue to be informed about it. Just as a reminder, in case you missed Maureen's housekeeping items at the beginning, if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the QA function at the bottom of your screen, and we will share this presentation in an email by the end of the day tomorrow. Moving on, what is social media? How do we define that? We all know what it is generally, but what's the definition of social media? Social media is an internet-based app or website where people can create, share, and exchange content. That content may be texts, posts, comments, photos, videos, even audio, like voice notes and real conversations. So in plain terms, social media is where we connect online. It's where we connect with our loved ones, our friends, our family, our neighbors, our colleagues. Unfortunately, it's also where strangers can come and directly connect with us. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes when it is somebody trying to commit fraudulent activity, it's not. That is how social media allows for scams. Social media was designed to make communication easy and fast, which it has done, but scammers are able to use these same tools to contact people instantly, to build trust quickly, and to spread scams widely. If we want to stop these scams, we have to understand the platforms where these scams are being spread. So you see on your screen a number of different platforms, most of which you're likely familiar with and you may be using day to day. Even if you don't personally use them, though, it's important to understand because scams can move across platforms very easily. And this misinformation can travel from one platform to another very quickly. Social media isn't just about entertainment at this point, it is an environment. It's also where some people are getting a lot of their information and news. And it's now one of the most common places that scammers can approach people, including, and especially for today's conversation, older adults. So how frequently is this happening? I'll hand it over to Yosef.
Thanks, Marissa, and thanks to the entire Alliance for Retired Americans team for inviting me to speak to you all today. I'm really excited to be here. So now that we've done a bit of level setting on what the technology is between social media and I thought it'd be very helpful to do some baselines on what is the scale of the problem that we're talking about regarding to scams. Scams aren't a new issue, as you all may be aware, but it's reaching massive problems and scales in terms of how many billions of dollars are being lost each year. So the FBI and FTC are two of the primary vehicles that do research and reports on what the scam losses look like each year. And every year, the numbers of losses are exponentially increasing. And the FBI's latest report, they found that scam losses recorded up to $16.6 billion. The FTC's own research wasn't too far behind. They found that scam losses totaled around $12 billion, and that's the entire country. When you factor in what is the impact to older Americans, it's disproportionately higher. The FBI's latest report found that older Americans reported about $4.8 billion in losses from online scams in 2024. That's about a 43% increase from the prior year. The FTC's own data isn't too far behind, showing that seniors and older Americans are disproportionately impacted. So that just shows you some of the impact that seniors are facing. On the social media part, reports and research also show that seniors are being targeted on social media platforms. In fact, social media has become the leading vector for how scams are not just originating, but are targeting various individuals. And we'll talk more about how that targeting and reach works in a minute. The last piece I just want to touch on when it comes to the levels of scale that scams are reaching is underreporting. Despite these crazy numbers I just talked about, we still have a big underreporting problem, which means that a lot of people who are experiencing scams or who are encountering scams aren't reporting it due to shame, embarrassment, fear, or not really knowing where to go to report it. So if you factor in all that underreporting, the chances that these loss numbers are higher are significantly higher. We're talking potentially hundreds of billions of dollars of scam losses. This is not a small problem at all. Next slide. So this graphic just gives you a sense of how older Americans are disproportionately impacted when it comes to not just scam reports, but scam losses. If you look at the graph with the bar chart, it'll show you that the number of complaints that seniors financially each year. In 2024, there were around 140,000 complaints filed by older Americans, which was about a 46% increase from the prior year. If you look at the chart to the left, it'll show that the number of complaints and losses from other demographics, folks under 20, folks between 20 and 29, and so on, are high, but are not as high as what those who are 60 and older are experiencing. Again, that just shows the disproportionate impact that older Americans are facing when it comes to being targeted by scams and losing money from scams. I will turn it back to Marissa, I think.
Thank you. So why are older adults being targeted? Because social media makes it so easy to connect, it also makes it very easy to deceive. And the result is that online scams have absolutely exploded. That's in size, in speed, and also in sophistication. This is no longer just one scammer seeing if they can make a little money. This is huge operations that are organized and reaching thousands, if not millions of people. When we look at who is being targeted most aggressively and suffering some of the biggest losses, unfortunately, one group stands out, and that is older adults. Knowing that, we're going to talk about why are older adults being targeted and what makes these scams so effective for these individuals. First on the list is that there are high levels of trust in institutions with older adults largely, and in their personal relationships. Scammers take advantage of that trust by impersonating people or organizations that feel familiar or feel official. Many older adults are also active online and on social media. These platforms do make it easier for scammers to reach these people directly. And these are often in spaces that feel very personal. They feel like this is my page. Why would they come to my page? And they also feel very informal. Older adults are also being targeted because of perceived financial stability. Scammers look for people who they believe may have savings, may have benefits, or access to financial accounts. All of these factors combine to exploit urgency, fear, and trust. And these scammers' messages are designed to create pressure on these individuals. They trigger emotional reactions that are very human and normal and push people to act quickly. At this point, social media and AI don't just host scams, they can actually amplify them, unfortunately, making them faster, more convincing, and harder to stop. That's what we are going to look at in the next slide, which is the vicious cycle of how social media and AI can fuel today's scams.
So we've talked a bit about how some of this technology works. This slide is really a chart to show how AI and social media are two sides of the same coin. A lot of the scams that are spreading online are primarily on social media. What's not clear without a better understanding is how AI intersects with all this. AI is essentially the infrastructure that is powering a lot of the scams that are operating on social media. And at the same time, social media companies own that AI infrastructure. So while they are putting out the technologies that are allowing bad actors to spread scams at scale, they're also hosting the social media sites and the platforms where they're targeting seniors and others with those scams. They are working symbiotically to create massive amounts of fraud that are reaching massive amounts of people or doing precise targeting to reach certain types of people with certain kinds of scams. This cycle of scam, as I'm coining it now, just shows how a scam may use AI and AI technologies and then get to a social media platform to target a consumer victim. It can also be the opposite way. It could be where a scammer is using AI technologies first and then pushing it out to social media, or relying on AI technologies to reach massive amounts of folks on social media. Next slide.
Now we'll watch a video to better understand one component of the alarming ways that AI can impact us.
Social media is now deemed the golden goose for scammers, topping texts, phone calls, and emails as the #1 place people are losing their money.
What's the total amount of money you sent?
Close to 150.
150,000.
Ended up taking 42,000 total out of our banking account.
11,300.
$9,400. I lost $695,000.
We all could fall prey to this. These con artists are professionals.
They are professionals. Listen carefully.
Hi there, I'm Jody. So, you're listening to me right now because the producer of this video wants to demonstrate the potential of voice cloning. Of course, what you're hearing sounds like me, and it sounds sincere. It even sounds human. But tell me, is this really me? Or is this my clone? Hi there, I'm Jody. So, you're listening to me right now because the producer of this video wants to demonstrate the potential of voice cloning. Of course, what you're hearing sounds like me, and it sounds sincere. It even sounds human. But tell me, is this really me, or is this my clone?
Can you detect any difference? One of those voices was generated by artificial intelligence.
Hi, Grammy. It's Jody. Gosh, I'm shaking. I was just in a car accident. I was texting and hit another driver. She's pregnant. They took her away in an ambulance. Really, I need your help. And please don't call Mom. Hold on, I'm on the lawyer's phone. Grammy, please talk to him.
With just a short sample of audio, often pulled from public sources, the scammer can use artificial intelligence to replicate a person's voice. Scams like this aren't new, but the powerful technology now behind it is.
Pretty disturbing, huh? So now that you've seen these scams and the ways that they're showing up in new ways, the next step is knowing what to look for. Even though the messages for different types of scams can look different, most scams do follow the same basic playbook. So we're going to walk through a few of these scam patterns so that you can understand the red flags that show up again and again, no matter what world of scam you're looking at. First is impersonation scams. So impersonation of trusted sources. These are things like messages from your bank, Medicare, or a loved one. I think we've all gotten messages that claim that they are, say, from our bank, which we immediately or don't know that they are inauthentic. Next is urgent requests for money or information. This may look like things like pay a fine immediately or there will be a warrant out for your arrest. Or could look like confirm your account number and your password now to ensure that we can protect your profile because it's been hacked. Next is pressure to act quickly and discouraging verification. These are both very common methods to ensure that you don't have the time to have or develop doubt in the person who's contacting you, or to confirm their identity. Another one that didn't make it on this list, though, is important is secrecy. That is a very popular element of a lot of scams. And that might look like, don't tell your family about our relationship. They won't understand how important we are to one another. Next is unsolicited contact. That's one that shows up over and over. Your bank, your accountant, your cell phone provider, they may need to contact you on short notice at some point, but think about, the last decade. How many times has that actually happened? Not very frequently. Be cautious when you are contacted in an unsolicited way. And last is offers that are too good to be true. This is things like, you win an iPad, pay $9.99 in shipping now to claim your prize. That is another one that, when it seems too good to be true, it likely is. All of these tactics play on our natural human emotions and reactions. And there are a lot of scammers who are really excellent at what they do at this point. As Rich said, they are professionals. When you learn to recognize these patterns, though, you are better equipped to protect yourself across many different situations. And even when the scams are especially compelling, you can hear those red flags and start to be cautious in those environments. These red flags undoubtedly showed up in the scams that Yosef will talk about next.
Thanks, Marissa. So I want to walk through a couple of real world examples, focusing on the types of scams that the FBI, the FTC, other sources have said are really, really prominent. In each example, you will notice some of the scam patterns that Marissa went through, as well as seeing how social media or AI is connected in facilitating the scam. The first example here is what is called a grandparent scam. In other words, this is usually a phone call that someone receives from a person impersonating a loved one and creating a false sense of urgency to demand money or some other kind of financial transaction from the person. A common example is a grandparent gets a phone call from someone they think is their granddaughter, grandson, who says, "Hey, I'm in jail. I need bail money. Please send the money to this location or this account." And the person receiving the call really thinks that's their grandson or grandkid. That's where the scam really takes root. It's creating that urgency by using the voice of a loved one or a person. So where does the technology really play a role here? First, a lot of these grandparent scams, folks are using AI now. They're using voice cloning technologies to capture the voices of individuals in impersonating loved ones. There's also a social media connection here too, because a lot of times that voice, that audio is getting captured from a social media account that a loved one may have. It could be a YouTube account, it could be something they posted on Facebook or Instagram, that's being cloned and imitated in that scam. And there's real world impact here. These types of scams can create financial harms. It can also leave victims with a sense of shame or embarrassment for being tricked by these sophisticated criminals. And then quickly here, a real world example is one where a California senior was swindled out of $25,000 by scammers who are using AI voice cloning mimicking technology to impersonate a loved one who said he was in a horrible accident and needed some money to be bailed out of jail. This is something where the person who was victimized felt really embarrassed and shamed, but it's a real problem, and it's something that's getting more and more sophisticated as AI technologies develop. Next slide. So the next example here are impersonation scams. There are all kinds of impersonation scams. The one that I'm focusing on now is government impersonation scams. These are getting more and more prevalent. In very simple terms, a government impersonation scam is when a scammer is impersonating a government agency or official institution to, again, facilitate a transaction or put pressure on an individual to get money from them. Some of the common examples I've seen is when someone is impersonating the IRS and reaching out to someone saying, you owe back taxes, send it to this location or you will get charged X amount of dollars. Or someone impersonating the FBI saying that you are being investigated for some criminal action and you need to send X amount of dollars to stop that criminal action from moving forward. The way social media plays a role here is oftentimes these scammers are creating fake pages or sending unsolicited messages to seniors, impersonating these individuals and creating that false sense of urgency for them to act. And again, the impact is real on these types of scams as well. The FTC, for those who don't know, the FTC is the Federal Trade Commission. They showed data earlier this year or late last year that these types of government impersonation scams have increased by more than fourfold. And older adults who have been scammed and lost money are saying that they've lost $10,000 or more from these types of scams. And here the graphic or the image just shows an example of a mass scale government impersonation scam who created fake accounts on Facebook to impersonate government agents and defrauded $67 million from a number of users. Next slide. Romance scams. This is something that is getting significant amounts of traction, particularly with older adults. I think most folks here may know what a romance scam here is, but briefly, this is when an individual creates a false sense of friendship or a romance with someone online in the effort to swindle them out of money or personal information. A lot of times these romance scams originate on social media through friend requests or through unsolicited messages. I've seen stories and examples where individuals get a direct message from someone just trying to spark up a conversation, and one thing leads to another, and they believe they're in a relationship, and that leads to them facilitating the theft of money or personal information. This is one example here. Kate Kleinert is a woman from Pennsylvania who's a widow. She fell victim to a romance scam after accepting a friend request from a man claiming to be Tony. They entered into multiple conversations that ultimately led to her losing a significant amount of money, her pension and her late husband's insurance. These are sometimes what are called the long con, in that they will build this relationship with you over time and then ultimately try and swindle you out of money. Next slide. Then finally, the last example here are health scams. There are a number of scams out there from criminals trying to promote these fake miracle drugs, cures, medications to swindle a lot of people out of money. And they're using social media to do this. A lot of times it's through ads, sometimes it's through fake accounts, fake pages, or it's through impersonation. The example here is from an article talking about how a criminal network of scammers were impersonating public officials, celebrities like Elon Musk or politicians, claiming to sell the cure for diabetes. This is, again, another example of how the platforms are used to spread these types of scams and the types of ways that they're spread. And AI is really just supersizing all of this. We've talked a lot about AI during this presentation. I just want to briefly touch here on the types of ways that AI is really making this a bigger problem. The Consumer Federation of America put out a report last year just showing how AI is making all these scams spread at mass scale. And there are a couple of ways that they're particularly doing this. One is through chatbots. Chatbots are just automating thousands of simultaneous conversations that are adapting in real time based on how someone responds and making scams much easier to facilitate. Another example is through image generation tools or voice generation tools. We've talked a bit about voice cloning and the grandparent scam as one example. The sophistication of AI is making those scams much harder to detect and much easier to fall for. A couple of other ways, just to briefly touch on, is the no longer the need for English fluency. AI is writing polished language and text to make transcribing these types of scams much easier and much bigger in terms of scale and reach. And here briefly is just all of the different ways that we have tracked how social media is playing a role in facilitating scams or enabling scams. We've talked about a lot of these in the examples I walked through, but just briefly, two of the biggest examples, friend requests and direct messages. The platforms are now set up in a way where anyone can get an unsolicited direct message or friend requests, making it really easy for any kind of criminal or scammer to reach you. Sometimes it can be very, very enticing to respond and enter into communications with these individuals because they're being friendly or they're offering you a product or a promotion and you're not entirely sure what it is. But again, this is the gateway that platforms are facilitating to spread those scams. The next common way is through algorithmic recommendations or targeted advertising. We'll talk about this more in a second, but ads are some of the biggest gateways for scams. And the platforms are providing the tools for criminals to target you with those ads. Same with recommendations. If you're scrolling through your feed, if you're on your phone and trying to see what is the latest news and information, there are times when scams can pop up in your feed. And that's because the platform is recommending that to you based off what you might have liked or engaged with in the past. The other common example is groups or community pages. Everyone here, I myself, are in certain Facebook groups or other social media groups. It could be a neighborhood group. It could be a support group. There are fake groups and pages popping up all the time trying to entice people to join so they can get scammed. Or there are bad actors who are targeting people who are in certain types of groups, impersonating government agents, impersonating other officials, and the attempts to scam individuals who are in those groups. And the last big example are cloned, impersonated accounts. We've talked a lot about this, but again, this is the voice cloning technology. These are AI tools that are creating those fake pages, fake accounts. And then quickly, it's not just the tools and the different gateways that platforms are providing. This is a business model. Social media platforms are profiting tremendously from scams. Meta in particular has made billions of dollars from scams in the last couple of years alone. This article in the slide here is from Reuters that did an investigation and found that in 2024, Meta/Facebook made $16 billion from scam ads alone. That is 10% of their global revenue, which is a huge percentage when you really, really think about it. And it's not just that they made that money, it's that they were incentivized to continue making that money. There are other reports out there that show that Facebook did not take appropriate action when they found that there were ads pushing scams. In fact, they did the exact opposite. In one article, they showed that Facebook waited until an ad received 32 strikes before banning it from the platform. In another investigation, they found that Facebook actually charged scammers more money for pushing fraudulent ads because they thought that was a quote unquote deterrence. But in actuality, this is embedded in their business model. And the more they make money from it, they're not going to stop it. And that's something to think about as we're talking through all these different gateways that platforms are spreading scams.
So the next slide is a video. It shows a little bit about what Yosef just said. Who's profiting? Because it's not just scammers.
Who is profiting? Professional scam networks operate at scale, 24/7, worldwide, reaching millions at once with automation, data, and technology. But scam artists are not the only ones cashing in. A Reuters investigation found that major social platforms reap a significant share of their income from the advertising placed and paid for by scammers. In fact, according to CNBC, Meta projected nearly 10% of its 2024 total sales came from scam and fraud-related advertising. That amounts to billions in annual revenue. United States Senators Josh Hawley of Missouri and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut are calling for an investigation.
They wrote, "Meta's central facilitating role in scams against consumers is unprecedented. By its own employees' assessment, Meta was involved in 1/3 of all successful scams in the US and was unmatched by other big tech platforms." The senators say if the FTC and SEC can verify the Reuters report, Meta should be forced to give up all profits from those ads, pay civil penalties, hold individual executives accountable, and enter into a binding agreement that would require the company to end scam ads.
Consumer watchdogs have also taken notice. Consumer Reports has called on the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys general for enforcement action, citing widespread scam advertising and ongoing harm to consumers. The question now is not whether scams are profitable, just who is benefiting and who is accountable. Join us and learn how you can help at retiredamericans.org.
So we've covered the how and the why. We've covered real scams, AI tools that accelerate them, social media platforms that enable them, and the fact that these scams create real financial incentives for a number of different groups. However, this campaign, as you might have guessed, isn't just about awareness, it's also about taking action. So now we're going to focus a bit on how we can take our power back. So protecting ourselves from day to day and working together to demand better protections and better accountability. Next slide. Yeah, protecting yourself and your family. On the screen now are some core safety messages for the online scams that we've discussed today. These are non-negotiables and they are essential to protecting your own personal information and well-being, including emotional, financial, even physical at times. No matter what fraud or scam emerges, the scammers rely on confusion and quick reactions. So use the tips that are on the screen to be prepared and to make cautious, informed decisions. First is to slow down. You've likely heard this before. When you're encountering a situation that raises some red flags, or even that doesn't, pause. Take a moment to consider the situation and take an informed next step in that process. Verify the sources independently. This could look like looking up the official phone number or website or URL or email address from an organization or entity. You want to make sure to double check that information, and you may double check the names of the individuals that are contacting you as well. So many details can be spoofed, unfortunately, these days. Spoof meaning faked. And so confirming the URL, the phone number, the caller ID is not always surefire, but it is one way to confirm identities and legitimacy. Next is to never share your personal or financial information. Scammers will often ask you to confirm your identity by sharing some bit of personal information. However, government agencies like Social Security are never going to call you out of the blue and ask you to confirm your Social Security number. One thing that you can do is you can look up the validity. Say if you get an official letter in the mail, an official email, you can often look it up separately and confirm that that email, that others have received this email and that the legitimacy is confirmed. There are places to do that, such as on the CMS website. Another one is to talk to someone you trust. Share the information about what you're experiencing with your loved ones, with your family members, somebody that you trust, and you can say, hey, I got this weird phone call or this email that I wasn't sure if it was real or not. What do you think? Somebody who might have perspective that you can rely on and depend on, and just bounce the information off of them. And last is to use a family password. That is a great tactic to protecting your own information, particularly in moments of potential emergency. So say you decide with your family members that your secret, that's the key here, secret family password is going to be hula hoop. So say I get a call from my daughter and she says something horrible happened. I can say, what's the family password? Or what's the keyword, some way to elicit the response from her that if it were truly her, she would know the answer to, and keep that information private as one way of protecting yourself. Overall, though, it's important to remember that these scams are really sophisticated and intentional. The scammers are highly skilled to play on our natural human emotions, and our being targeted or falling for these scams does not make us a failure, and it should not. It can elicit embarrassment, but our hope and our goal is to provide you all with the information that you need to feel confident in protecting your own information. The next slide will provide you with more information about how you can fight back. Just protecting ourselves is no longer enough. We have to demand the change that we want to see in these systems. So why is advocacy necessary? Now that we have a grasp of the widespread issue that is at play and how technology allows these scammers and these issues to scale, the next question is, what do we do about all of this? Education alone, as we said, cannot solve the problem that is operating at this point at industrial scale. That is why advocacy is a core piece of the Stop the Scam campaign. We have to demand stronger safeguards, stronger enforcement, and stronger accountability from the technology companies and systems that allow for these scams to spread constantly. Advocacy also means making sure that older adults' voices are being heard all the time. Personal stories help decision makers understand that this isn't just an abstract issue that happens to who knows who. It helps to bring a face, a voice, and sometimes a name to these stories that we're hearing. It's happening to real people every day in their own communities, and the harm can be truly devastating. So in this campaign, we educate to prevent the harm today, but we also advocate to reduce harm long-term by changing the systems that enable this scam behavior to continue. Joseph?
Thanks, Marissa. Really, really helpful tips and really good overview of why advocacy is necessary. I cannot stress enough how the big tech companies are facilitating much of these scams and they're profiting off of it. The burden should not be on all of us to protect ourselves. It should be on the companies to stop these scams from spreading in the first place. So wanted to just walk through a couple of platform accountability solutions, if we can get to the next slide, that get to what steps that platforms can take to better mitigate these types of scams. The first one is just around AI laws. For folks who may not have been tracking this, the tech companies have been trying to block states from passing AI laws for the last year now. AI is a growing business model for them, and they do not want any type of laws preventing them from making more money from AI. So what they've done is ask the federal government to pass a law preempting states from enacting their own AI laws. But AI laws are really, really important. There have been states that have passed laws that get more transparency around AI, get more safeguards in terms of how AI is deployed, how AI should not be deployed. These are the kinds of protections we all need. And the company should not be interfering with those types of laws that are helping all of us. So the first thing that we can all do is push back against these types of efforts in Congress to block states from passing their own AI laws. The second thing is around safety by design features. As I walk through all the different ways that scams are spreading online, whether it's friend requests, whether it's fake groups, whether it's ads, these are all design features that the platforms are actively deploying. And we need to implement better safeguards, whether it's stronger privacy settings, more transparency, more accessibility features, so we can actually report scams on the platform and get feedback from them on what they're doing to remove those scams. Those are all safety by design features that should be implemented. This third piece is around advertising. Ads are a huge business model for scams, for platforms, and we know that scams are getting spread that way. We just need more transparency around who's advertising, getting the platforms to do a better checklist of making sure that bad actors are not pushing scams on their platforms. Fourth is data sharing with law enforcement. We know all these scams are happening online. It's not clear how much of that is getting shared with law enforcement, so the platform should be doing more there. And the last is a bit of a novel approach, but the platforms are profiting from scams, and they should be compensating victims of individuals that are getting scammed on their platforms. So creating some sort of compensation program where the platforms are paying into a fund is something that is really, really important.
Thanks, Yosef. So I'll move on the next slide quickly through information about how to share your story. If you know someone who has experienced a scam or you yourself have, please consider sharing your story. If you don't have your phone on you or you don't want to move quickly, you don't feel like you need to capture this QR code right now, we will send it out via an email by the end of the day tomorrow. Storytelling is our very best tool for advocacy, and it is an essential part of humanizing this campaign. Please know that we're never going to share your story without your permission. Consider sharing the information that you do have, though. Next slide. Next is how important it is to contact your representatives. As Yosef shared, we need a multi-pronged approach to stop the AI-powered scams that are proliferating on social media and putting our seniors at risk. Big tech corporations are spending millions of dollars lobbying Congress to block state and local laws and regulations that would help hold them accountable for their part in this growing issue. Please scan this code or use the code that will be in the email tomorrow to tell your representatives not to stand in the way of protecting Americans. We need to urge them to oppose this legislation that preempts any state's ability to regulate AI and crack down on AI-powered scams. And last, before we move to questions, given all the information, sorry, next slide. Given all the information that we have provided, do you know anyone who might fit into one of the categories that you see on your screen? Do you know somebody who's experienced a tech-enabled scam? Do you know somebody who might encounter a scam over the next year? Do you want to help? Do you want to host an event? We want your support. We aren't acting alone in these efforts, and we need all of our peers and partners to help raise the volume on this critical issue. So essential. We want you to be with us throughout this campaign. At the beginning of the presentation, Rich took a poll that you may have participated in. He asked, have you or anyone you know lost money to a scam? The results were that 58% of you said yes, that you or someone you know has participated in a scam. From what we learned today, that is very likely underreported, because a lot of the people who may have experienced scams may not realize that they felt that they experienced these scams, or may not want to talk about it. These percentages of the reality of this issue are disturbing, they're scary, and they reflect what's happening across the country. The time is now to take action, and we will go ahead and take the next few minutes for questions. I know that we've gotten some really great ones.
Thanks, Marissa. Hey, everybody. We will try to get to as many questions as we can. We have a full capacity Zoom here and even more watching on YouTube, so I apologize if we don't get to your question, but let's get to it. The first question comes from Don O. Said, yesterday I was fooled by an AI video on YouTube purporting to be George Will in an hour-by-hour news report. It was fake, but it took me a while to figure it out. Why does YouTube allow such fake news? Yosef, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So a lot of what we talked about today on scams was more around the financial elements of scams and how certain types of scammers are pushing contents, messages to take money. There's a bigger area of this around impersonators, fraudsters that are pushing ideology, false information, et cetera, et cetera. I think in big picture here, it's all the same types of tools, whether it's the use of AI ads, algorithmic recommendations that are pushing fraudulent content. So the question and thing we should really focus on is how do we mitigate these types of tools that the platforms are allowing bad actors to use?
Thanks. Marissa, in the video you played, there is an example of someone mimicking a loved one's voice. Marilyn asks, how do scammers get access to a loved one's voice to mimic?
There may be videos online that they've posted on social media inadvertently sharing the tone of their voice, the way that they communicate, and that can be manipulated to say anything the scammer wants, even if it's just a simple "Happy birthday, Grandma." You know, these kinds of videos can be manipulated in really scary ways.
Thanks. Yosef, you've talked about this, but can you just reiterate? Luis G asks, is there a way to hold these social media platforms accountable for letting the scammers operate on their platforms?
Absolutely. There's a number of solutions that we have put together that really require platforms to change their business models to create safety by design features so scammers aren't exploiting systems that the platforms have in place. Much of this needs to happen at the state level. So there is a component here of getting state legislators, state enforcers to pass laws, to pursue enforcement actions, to hold the platforms accountable. There's also just an effort of getting the word out that the platforms need to make changes. Collectively, everyone can do their part to call out the platforms and say, this is a problem. You shouldn't be profiting off of it. And our lawmakers should be hearing our voices.
And this is for either of you. Meta has been mentioned a lot, but Brenda asks, what does Meta stand for and what is it?
Meta is the new name for Facebook.
Facebook, Instagram, and Telegraph?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, sorry. Thank you. Okay, Ronnie S. asks, I am now seeing a disclaimer under some pictures that reads AI generated. Is this following a new law or can there be a law?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. It could certainly be a law. A lot of states are considering a number of types of AI laws. One type is transparency. So it could be a requirement that any AI generated content get a label saying that this is essentially originating from AI or some type of disclaimer. So it could certainly be that. It could also be the platforms acting on their own, trying to push some level of transparency. It's hard to say where it's coming from without knowing what state you're in and what the laws might say. But I think the bigger point here is states are considering these laws all the time. Laws on deepfakes, particularly, laws on audio and video cloning and authentication. These are the types of things that are top of mind for a lot of lawmakers.
Joseph Z asks, with so many data breaches of our personal data, is it safe to give our data to any company or government agency? Marissa, since you've worked for a government agency, do you want to answer that?
Sure. I would say that is a very broad question. Regardless of who you're giving your information to, use caution. Use the steps that we talked about, pause, and make an informed decision. Consider how you were contacted, why this entity is asking for this information, what their supposed intended use is. Is this an appropriate way for them to be contacting you? For example, Social Security is never going to contact you through Facebook. It's just not going to happen. Consider those kinds of factors when making decisions about sharing information.
Okay, speaking of government agencies, how can you tell if a government Social Security website you found on the internet is a legit website to get a replacement Social Security card?
You can go to, is it ssa.gov? That should always result in finding the site that belongs to Social Security Administration. I would say go directly to that site. Don't scroll many responses down to find a different solution to, a different website that has a different URL. Go to the URLs that you know are connected to legitimate government organizations.
Thanks. Anonymous says, I don't use social media much. Can AI be used to generate scams via text message, voicemail, an email? Joseph, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, short answer is yes. We walked through some of the ways that AI has been doing this. Voice cloning scams are a big one. Text-based scams are another one. AI can automate messaging, prompts, languages to push out these types of scams at scale.
Hey. And this is a technical question from Julie Ann. If you receive an unsolicited email that is clearly spam or spoofing, should you unsubscribe from the list legitimizing your email, or just block the email and report the spam feature of your email provider?
I do not recommend clicking on any link or any aspect of any email that you believe to be a scam. Don't interact with it, and certainly don't click unsubscribe at the bottom because it might take you to a different place altogether.
Is it safe to assume that these government agencies will send something in the actual mail if they need to reach out to you? The question is from Tina.
That is the general expectation. I can't broadly say that every agency will always send a letter in the mail for every situation. You can always contact that agency directly to ask if they will send out a letter for a specific circumstance. You can sometimes look up that letter online if you received something to see if it the legitimacy of it. You can contact that agency. Yeah.
And you've mentioned algorithms a couple times. What is an algorithm, Joseph?
Sure. An algorithm is essentially a rule or a prompt based off a number of inputs that a company puts based on data. So let me explain that a little bit easier. You are inputting data into your social media accounts, whether you're liking, messaging, clicking on stuff. All those inputs are generating a rule based on what your interests are to push certain content to you. The platforms have developed the algorithms in a way where they feed you more of the same content that they think you're interested in based on what you're engaging on. So if you are interested in cars, for example, the algorithm will push more car-related content to you. What happens is the platforms optimize these algorithms for engagement. So in other words, they want to keep you on their platforms as much as possible. So they will push more and more content. This content can be more extreme, or it could lead to the scam or fraud area based on how much of that content they think you should get.
Thanks. And last question, who do you contact if you feel like you've been scammed?
Depends on the situation. We will be providing a resource related to that directly. In general, though, you can contact, I brought up my list. You can contact the Federal Trade Commission, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, local law enforcement, your state senior Medicare patrol program, your bank or credit card. It all depends on the type of scenario that you've experienced. We'll make sure to provide more information on the new site, retiredamericans.org/stopthescam, which should be available within the next few weeks, if not already.
Thanks, Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
And one more question that was asked a bunch of times is, will this presentation be made available to share with your groups? Yes, we will be sending the recording, the PowerPoint presentation, the links, and all the materials out to you all tomorrow. And I'll turn it back over to Marissa to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, Maureen. So by raising our voices, sharing our stories, and pushing for meaningful protections, older Americans can help secure safer online spaces for everyone. Please take a moment this week to tell your representatives not to stand in the way of protecting Americans. Urge them to oppose any legislation that preempts any state's ability to regulate artificial intelligence and crack down on AI-powered scams. That language will be included in the link to take action that is in the email you'll receive by the end of the day tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time and for your participation in this today. We hope that this training was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Stop the Scam presentation or event. Thank you.